You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody, you might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is episode 264. Episode 264. We're happy to have you back again. We appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. We got a lot to talk about. Today we were supposed to have another reaction episode, but the last two episodes have been reaction episodes. So it's been a while since I sat here solo and just had a conversation. And I think with what we're seeing around the world, particularly in the Middle East, but more importantly here at home, it's important for me to sit down and just have a deep dive. Well, I mean, this is what Professor Penn and I have been talking about. This is what we've been cautioning for the last 6 months. I remember saying after the day Donald Trump won that the Uniparty would try and recoalesce around the military-industrial complex in Israel and try and coalesce the MAGA movement on that particular issue as well. And I wasn't just saying that, and Professor Penn wasn't just saying that because we just arbitrarily have some conjecture or theory, political theory. We said it because we have spent the last 2 years inside the Republican Party here in Minnesota, going around the state, and even in some respects around the country, and hearing the conversation, hearing the sentiment, hearing the way that politics is discussed from the inside. And much of what we're seeing today is coming from the inside, but it's also coming from an underlying spirit in the American people. And so, yeah, I mean, Professor Penn, even more so than I. And by the way, again, it's always worth mentioning that Professor Penn, whose podcast airs on Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Central. Professor Penn is an American Jew himself. He's, his ancestry comes from the Ukrainian Jewish lineage, and comes from a Orthodox Jewish family, or somewhat Orthodox Jewish family. And, he feels, and he said on his podcast a number of times, and he said on Hebrews, and he said, here on Please Call Me Crazy, or on Real America's Voice, when he guest hosts for me on the Royce White Show, that he feels strongly that the America First and MAGA movement is deeply rooted in our foreign policy, or our view on foreign policy. And even as an American Jew, our involvement or our entanglement in foreign affairs has to change. It has to shift. And not only just because of what we're dealing with today in terms of our country being in crisis, but what it has historically meant to our country's politics and to our country's overall prosperity and well-being, security, safety, all of it. Our foreign policy has to shift. The view on foreign policy has to shift. Now, we've started to do that work, and I can commend Donald Trump for even opening the dialogue to question what our traditional, conventional foreign policy has been. Obviously, biggest around the war there between Russia and Ukraine, but even more so, Donald Trump has been willing to sit down with leaders who have otherwise been considered persona non grata, one of which being Kim Jong-un of North Korea, where people criticized him ad nauseum for even having a dialogue with the North Korean leader. And a lot of us here in the MAGA movement said, no, we're sick of all this red tape, all of this, the deep state or the administrative state or the political elite, the permanent political class in this country telling our president or any would-be leader that they can't aspire to peace and pursue peace through common conversation and dialogue. We're tired of hearing it. And so even when they went after Donald Trump for talking to the North Korean leader, he didn't lose support. He gained support. People said, no, yeah, we should be talking to everybody, especially if they're a threat. What does not communicating with them do for us? What does that help? It doesn't help in your personal relationships, in your personal life. It doesn't help in your work life. Why would it help in international affairs or foreign policy and politics? Doesn't make any sense. So that never hurt Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has again opened the door for us to be able to have these conversations about our foreign policy. This is at the beating heart of the MAGA movement, reorienting, reconsidering our foreign policy. Except when we get to Israel. And I guess it's somewhat personal for me because as much as I love the Jewish people, as many Jewish friends as I have, my co-host being an American Jew himself, I share an office space with a number of Jewish Americans as well. I went to school at Hopkins High School, which has a very big Jewish community. I have a bunch of young men that I've coached over the years in basketball at Hopkins High School who are young Jewish men and love them to death. I mean, they're like family. I consider them family. If they called me today on the phone and said, Royce, I'm in a situation. I need your help. I drop what I was doing and go and help them. And I'm certain that many of them feel the same way about me. So for the mainstream media to call me anti-Semitic in my last Senate campaign, while simultaneously being criticized for having too much, sympathy, or you could say, or too much, affiliation, connection with the Jewish community from the other side of the coin, it starts to frustrate you where you're discouraged. I mean, I'm genuinely discouraged by this situation. It's not just about the foreign policy and the prospect of being dragged into another forever war. It's about the fractionation of the MAGA movement at its base along an issue that it seems we can't really talk about at all, let alone rationally. And hopefully tonight I'm able to do that in some respect. And again, I want to start with my own story. Before we get to Israel and Iran, and before we get to all the things that led up, and before we get to the history of our involvement in the Middle East and all of that, esoteric geopolitical talk, I just want to talk from my own experience, me. Again, my only co-host on this show, the only person that I feel comfortable giving the reins of my show to and saying, here, you take the hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is, and you do the show the way you want it. I don't call Professor Penn and say, hey, I want you to talk about this, I want you to talk about that, or I want you to cover this or cover that. I give the reins of my show over to an American Jew and let him say and do what he will on the show, and that's how America should be. That's how companies and media companies should be run. They shouldn't be run like Barstool Sports, where Dave Portnoy is telling one of his hosts that he pays good money to for whatever reason. Obviously, he believes he's talented and good at what he does. And he's telling them, hey, I own you because you're under contract here at Barstool Sports. I own you. You can't make a joke about Jewish people. It's off limits. And me and Professor Penn joke all the time about being black or being Jewish. And I guess there's a little bit more acceptance of that because both cultural narratives are used in a similar fashion. But again, under no way do I ever try and censor what Professor Penn says on the Royce White show on Saturday mornings when he fills in, or when he's on Hebrews and we do the show together, or when he's hosted Please Call Me Crazy and I was at the Big Three a few times last summer. I never talk or tell him what he should or shouldn't say. And there's a reason, and the reason isn't just because he's my friend and we have a great relationship and we're like family. All of that is true, but it's more about his ideas and what his worldview is and what his politics are. I know what his worldview is and what his politics are, and his politics and worldview in many ways is controversial because he is an American Jew that has on a number of times said, hey, listen, I read the gospel and the gospel has been beneficial to my life and I believe in Christ. And I'm Jewish and came up in an Orthodox Jewish family and I love the Jewish people. I love my family. I love Israel, but how Israel has been used and how the Jewish identity has been used in American politics is inappropriate and it offends him. And again, on Friday, we'll be running a Hebrews episode that we recorded earlier this week before this entire conflict really broke out, and especially the spillover into the commentary that's now broken out between people like Tucker and Mark Levin and Ted Cruz, and you got Candace Owens out there still, and so on and so forth. So this thing is blown up. As it should, rightfully so. It's a big issue. Going to another war, potentially nuclear war, is a big issue and something we all should consider. But we recorded our podcast, earlier in the week, so we'll run it this Friday. But again, I never have a concern about what he's going to say, and I preface this whole thing with that because imagine being partners, business partners, being co-hosts, sharing a political movement in many senses here in America. A lot of people who watch the show who are from Minnesota know that myself and Professor Penn are almost tied at the hip, and much of a lot of the shift that has happened in the Minnesota Republican Party can be attributed to myself, a young black man, and an older, more wise Jewish gentleman coming together and saying we have to change the narrative here and being able to articulate that narrative in a way people understand. It blew my mind to see the mainstream media again try to paint me as anti-Semitic. And at some point we have to ask ourselves, regardless of what happened in World War II, regardless of what happened 5,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, regardless of what's happened, over the course of history to the Jewish people, we have to ask ourselves, how are we using the Jewish identity today? And if we can't do that, again, and I'll say this, we never have a problem talking about black people. We never have a problem talking about Hispanic people. We never have a problem talking about Somalis or the Chinese or Asians. We never have a problem talking about white people. We talk about white people all the time in this country. In fact, some of the rhetoric around white people is just disgusts me at this point. Why? I have an entire, heritage that is Norwegian. Again, I tell people all the time, my grandmother's half black, half Norwegian, but her mother was full-blooded Norwegian, and that entire side of the family were first-generation immigrants from Norway, and it doesn't get any more white. So to hear people say, like Ilhan Omar, white men are the most dangerous people on the planet, I guess now, this Vance Boltier situation over the past couple of weeks here in Minnesota, lends credence to that theory that white men are dangerous. And there are dangerous white men. I'm not saying there aren't. But this whole race narrative has us bogged down in the weeds. It's just something that we keep tripping all over, and we know better. See, that's the thing that really bothers us. We know better. We know it's being used to divide us. We know it's being used to distract us. We know it's being used to manipulate us, but yet we can't keep ourselves from feeding into it. It's like a beast we must feed. And if I can, being in politics, I hope to be a voice of reason. They can call me an extremist. They can call me a conspiracy theorist. They can say I'm unfit for the United States Senate. They can say what I want. But hopefully, if you've been watching this podcast long enough, you will have become familiar with just how reasonable and sort of straight shooting I really am. And I got to shoot straight on this issue. For some reason, a person like myself, who has very intimate relationships with a number of Jewish people, is still called anti-Semitic if I even say the word Jewish at all. And it's just a non-fucking starter, guys. Really, it's a non-starter. If you don't agree with every single decision that Bibi Netanyahu or the Israeli government make, then you don't support the Jewish people. You don't love the Jewish people. You even hate the Jewish. It's one thing to say that you don't support or don't love them, but to swing the pendulum all the way to hate immediately says something deeply dishonest about the dialogue. Deeply dishonest. So I could not support you and not love you, but that doesn't mean I hate you. And that doesn't mean I want to see you harmed. So the fact that we've created that paradigm is a non-starter already. But then we talk about people like myself, like a Tucker Carlson, like a Steve Bannon, like a Jack Posobiec, who have been self-described Zionists at different times. I mean, who have almost been devout in their support of Israel in the most general geopolitical and cultural religious sense. Now all of a sudden they're anti-Semitic too. I mean, the reason why it resonates with me so much how Professor Penn talks about this issue is because I understand his anxiety about it, and I see it the same way for Black people. And that when you scream racism all the time for every issue, eventually it loses its meaning. Eventually people just start to resent you, and now we can't tell if people are racist or not. And you screamed it so many times, and the boy who cried wolf, all of a sudden you start saying it, and potentially somebody could actually be racist, like saying that Black people can't get IDs, and that's pretty fucking racist. But when people are actually racist to you, nobody believes it. It's the same thing with anti-Semitic, and it concerns me because there is genuine anti-Semitism in the world, just like there's genuine racism. There's genuine racism about all races in some respects. Hell, there are plenty of people, plenty of cultures in this world today that don't like white people. They can't even really identify what white people are. You're talking about Europeans, but what people are we even talking about? It's even this Jewish thing. I got to just be honest with you. When we say Jewish, do they ever show the Black Jews that live in Israel? Do they ever show the Sephardic Jews that live in Israel, the Black Jews that come from Algeria, that come from Tunisia, that come from Ethiopia, that come from Morocco, that come from these African countries? Do they ever show the African Jews that live in Israel? Tell me one time you've watched the mainstream media and either in comedy or in Hollywood, movies, TV shows, the music industry, political commentary about Israel. Tell me one time that you can recall where you've seen Israel discussed in the mainstream media and they show you the African Jews. It's not a small portion of them either. I mean, there's like 2 to 3 million African Jews that live there in Israel. Maybe it's like 1 million. I think there's like 5 million people. I'm not quite sure on the numbers, but there's a significant population of African Jews that live there in Israel. And I take you all the way back to Donald Sterling telling his side piece in those infamous recordings, they're Black Jews and they're white Jews. They're Black people and white people. It's always been that way. It always will be that way. And she goes, well, what are you saying, that the Black Jews are less than the white Jews? And Donald Sterling says he scoffs at her and goes, yeah, 50% less. I mean, I thought that was the biggest, headline that should have come out of that Donald Sterling story. And you can go back and read the transcripts of the recorded phone calls for yourself. This isn't an opinion. This is a fact. He said in the recordings, yeah, the Black Jews are about 50% less than the white Jews. And I just don't get how you come to that conclusion. As a man who picked up, and again, and we could talk about the European ancestry of the Jewish identity as well and say, and this is where I split from a lot of people who criticize the current, let's say Jewish lobby or the state of Israel. They say, well, you people don't have Semitic DNA anyway. First, don't go there. Don't fucking go there. Don't go to the DNA deal. That's bullshit. We can say that we don't agree with Israel's policies. We don't agree with their decisions, their military decisions, without going to some Darwinist DNA example. It's bullshit. It just muddies up the conversation. Let's just stick to what it is. And if we want to go to the DNA deal, let's be clear. The Semitic identity, the Semitic title is given to people who are from a certain area geographically or that speak a certain language. So theoretically, no matter where you're from geographically in the world, if you speak Aramaic, Hebrew, or if you speak Aramaic Arabic or Hebrew, you're a Semite. You're a Semitic person. If you speak one of the 3 Semitic languages, you are Semitic, which means that theoretically you could literally decide to pick up a Semitic language and learn it, and you still should be rightfully considered a Semitic person. If you decide to one day just pick up Hebrew and start speaking Hebrew, you should be considered a Semitic person by voluntary. Then they say, well, these aren't the Jews of the biblical Israel. Don't go there. It's not the flex you think it is. It's not saying what you want it to say. Because in fact, the Jews that still remain today that carry the religious tradition on picked up, even if you say they picked up somebody else's religious tradition, they picked it up and carried it on, and they kept the tradition. So it doesn't say what you wanted to say about the African Jews or the original Jews, like the Hebrew Israelites would make the argument that the original Jews were lost. Well, you were lost because you gave up your religious tradition at some point, or you were stripped from it, or you didn't, at some point you had a choice to die for it or not, and you didn't choose to die for that religion to keep that tradition tight. So I'm not buying that. But that doesn't mean that every criticism of Jewish people is anti-Semitic either. And I start with the broad cultural to bring us into the current political, right? We said in the MAGA movement, no more forever wars. We didn't want to be involved in these endless wars. We didn't want the military-industrial complex and the deep state and the security state and the administrative state to have control over the sovereignty of this country and its people, its citizens, through these military, agendas, through these military operations, through this military, vision of the world. No more forever wars. And we all came together to support Donald Trump. And much of Donald Trump's message was in line with that sentiment. No more forever wars. I mean, I can even remember Donald Trump, me finally getting to the treasure chest of hidden Donald Trump sound bites that the mainstream media hid from us, and him going after the Bushes for the Iraq war, and me in that moment going, damn, this dude is real. This dude is real, man. This dude was actually saying that shit. Talking about our trade deals with the Kuwaitis and back in the 80s, before Desert Storm really even popped off all the way. The Gulf War, so much of who Donald Trump is has rejected this foreign entanglement this entire time. And then we get to this Israel issue and something changes. And it's not just Donald Trump. I'm not even really criticizing Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's the president of the United States, and does he have intelligence that we don't have? That's probable, likely. There's no doubt that he may have access to intelligence, quote unquote, that we don't have. But even more so, he's dealing with a chessboard that has a lot of moving parts to it. And I'm not saying this to defend him either, but I'm not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater on Trump and say, oh, well, like Dave Smith, oh, I supported Trump, now I don't. Now he should be impeached. Slow down, Dave, okay? He should be impeached. You guys are going way too far. There's no way you can convince me that the air support we've given to Israel thus far, equals an impeachment. I mean, that's just, that's just not squaring for me. Should there be criticism? Unequivocally, absolutely. There should be fierce and staunch criticism. Even furthermore, there should be serious question about what is actually going on here. To throw it all on one man is the same scapegoat that our society has been plagued by for many, many generations. It's how we lost our country in the first place. Too much scapegoat, too much some boogeyman to blame and not looking inward, okay? All the power that we've given to our government, to any foreign influence, to any one politician or elected official is a representation of our own lack of accountability and responsibility for our citizenship. So let's not throw it all on Donald Trump. But what should be said and what can be said is that the MAGA base even, Even the base of people, and I'm talking MAGA. I'm not saying Republicans or conservatives that voted for Donald Trump out of spite of the Democrats or out of spite of the crazed lunacy that was happening with the LGBTQ or the open border or whatever else. I'm not talking about that. To say the COVID deal was huge as well. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the MAGA base. In the MAGA base, we're having a fight, an argument about this issue. And that troubles me. But I understand it because I've lived through it. Again, I can't tell you how many people read from the Communist Star Tribune that Royce White is anti-Semitic and then came up to me in person and asked me my opinion about Israel and the Jews. It would take very little research to find out that calling me anti-Semitic is about as ridiculous as you could possibly get. Very little research, but people are that influenced by the headlines, by media organizations that they otherwise say they don't trust. And that tells us something. It doesn't tell us something about that particular issue. It doesn't tell us something about that particular story or even that particular person. What it tells us is that people are still very easily influenced. And it's not just the libtards or Democrats that we talk about all the time here in the conservative and MAGA movement. It's also us. We are also easily influenced by the same media sources that we say are corrupt and dishonest. We are still easily influenced by the machine. And there's nothing more machine spoon-fed than our thought process about Israel. For one, we all run around saying this is a constitutional republic, but then when you talk about Israel, you say, well, they're the only other democracy in the Middle East. Well, when we talk about being a democracy here, everybody rightfully rejects it in the conservative movement. When you hear people talk about democracy, it is a common retort in the conservative movement or Republican Party to say, we are not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic, of which I agree, staunchly agree, that we're a constitutional republic, and there is a difference. But as soon as we talk about Israel, we justify our following them in lockstep by saying they're a democracy in the Middle East. Dissonance, contradiction, selective, moral relativism. These are leftists. These are socialist, Marxist, social constructionist, postmodern ways of dealing with philosophy and first principles, intellectual dishonesties. If you want to, let's get to what we're dealing with right now. Israel, Iran. There's a war. It's already begun. Proxies, both considered proxies. You go talk about geopolitics. You look at the proxy map. We know this is a proxy war. It's been a proxy site. The Middle East has been a proxy site since the British divvied it up back after World War II, and even before that, you could say. And again, on this show, we constantly talk about the British Empire's business model: drugs, piracy, slavery. Another part of their business model, another tactic of the British is to divide and conquer. How else can you be a little tiny island with a very good navy and keep all of the world in check? You have to divide and conquer, and they've been very good at that. The sun never sets on the British Empire. We keep saying that we don't want to fight all of the British Empire's wars. I've been saying it. Professor Penn has been saying it. Steve Bannon has been saying it. We're not European. We're not British. We don't want to fight the opium war with China. If we're going to fight a war with China, it's going to be on our own basis, our own American basis. We don't want to fight a war with Russia. If there's a war to be had with Russia, we want to fight it on our own American basis, not on the basis of some European commonwealth. If we're going to fight a war against the Muslims and the Arabs, we want to fight that war on our own basis, not at the behest of some proxy state that Great Britain dropped down there for explicit political means. And what scares me what scares me the most is all of the use of Christ as the justification. And what it shows is that a lot of these people who claim to be Christians aren't even reading their Bibles. And that's the scariest thing of all. As a Christian, As a Christian, what most scares me in this whole situation is to realize that the Christian identity that we hold so true in this country, here in America, here in the West, is really surface deep at best. Why is it surface deep? Well, there's a bunch of reasons, but first and foremost, we are not in the covenant of Moses. We are not in the covenant of David. We are not in the covenant of Abraham. You have to understand that the Bible itself there is time matters in the Bible. That's why the Bible is told in a sequential nature. And so when Christ comes and enters us into the new covenant, the Christic, what they call the Christic covenant, the covenant with Christ, we are all now Christians under the covenant with Christ. And Christ explicitly says, those who reject me will lose the kingdom. And they make an argument. What's ironic about it is many Christian theologians make the argument that the interpretation of saying, if you reject Christ, you lose the kingdom is not about the spiritual kingdom in eternity. It's actually about the literal kingdom of Israel. And we know that there are a lot of Jews who reject Christ. Am I saying that they need to accept Christ? That's their own spiritual journey that's been, prophesized in the Bible since the beginning of this whole thing. The journey for the Jews to accept Christ and the second coming of the Messiah and the whole deal. We know that part of the deal. But the point I'm making right now is, how do we justify getting involved in a political war based on a religious idea that's not even being upheld? There are other examples of this. There are other examples where we, somehow we allow people who don't even believe in God to tell us how we should believe in God. And God bless his heart still to this day. I love Jason Whitlock, and I'm sure I saw the other day he had something to say on the show, because I called him out, and I did call him out. Me and Jason Whitlock got into a beef because for the first time in my, year and some change relationship and appearing on Fearless, he stopped me in my tracks mid-recording and told me that I couldn't say another Mark Levin's name, that I couldn't say a man's name. He'd never done that to me before, never tried to censor me, never told me what I should and shouldn't say or shouldn't talk about. He never had to talk to me about it because I'm pretty rational and reasonable. And I for everybody to say, well, you talk over people's heads and you go on a tangent and blah, 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 is like, well, keep the plot. Some of this shit is complex and it has historical context that people need. But I'm pretty reasonable and rational, and I'm pretty well thought out. And Jason Whitlock, gave me that credit and compliment on a number of occasions out of his own mouth, in his own words. And then to one day say that Mark Levin's name in passing, really, and it was really a very soft critique of Mark Levin. I mean, I called him an asshole, but even that's kind of, even that's pretty casual. And to have him say, hey, don't say this guy's name anymore again, especially when I was brought on the show in that same week to talk about the Jewish influence on the black entertainment industry or on the black elite or black celebrities, where Jason was criticizing that relationship. But it doesn't apply to Mark Levin. I mean, again, you start to see it all and you go, what the fuck is going on here? Seriously, what the fuck is going on here? And God bless everybody out there. I'm not saying this to be, to be offensive. And I know the F word offends you, right? But you evangelical Christians, you got to get your shit in order. Seriously. 30 million Christians still don't participate in the This blows my mind. It's estimated that some 30 million of Christian voters, people who are could vote. 30 million Christian voters in this country don't vote because they claim, I don't know, that the political is not important. But then you want to be involved with another country's politics. See, this doesn't square for me. And hey, I could lose support. You could not like me. You could say, "Oh, Royce, you're an asshole," and "Fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about." Cool. But answer the question. How is it that 30 million Christians in this country gave our country over to Satanists and Marxists and communists because they say the political process is not for them, that politics is not the important thing in life, but we are willing to go to a nuclear war or a 20-year forever war, or maybe just a war for a couple of months, couple of years. I don't know. We're willing to go to war. We're willing to go fight and die for another country's politics. That doesn't bother anybody out there. That doesn't, are we at least allowed to question the logic in it? We're not even allowed to question it. I can't tell you the response. Tucker Carlson is anti-Semitic. Tucker Carlson hates the Jews in Israel. Are you fucking kidding me? I swear to you, about a year back, as much as I like Tucker Carlson and all the things that he said, just given his history and where he came from, I would have more been on the of the thinking that Tucker Carlson has too much influence from the Israel lobby. And I think Tucker's even kind of said that. He's like, man, some of these people are my friends. Some of these people I have very close relationships with, which would, kind of prove right the theory that, man, if before this whole thing happened, you were thinking, man, Tucker's more on the side of the Zionist agenda than he is against it, you would be well within your right to say that. Now he hates the Jews. Jack Posobiec hates the Jews. Steve Bannon hates the Jews. Are you kidding me? What are we doing here? What are we doing? All we're doing is we're undermining genuine anti-Semitism. All we're doing is the same thing with black people. When I see black people call racism for every single thing, I stop them. Stop. Don't do that. Don't say that's racist. Don't say it's racist to say there's black on black crime. I saw somebody the other day saying black on black crime is made up. Black on black crime is made up because it's disproportionately characterized by the mainstream media when there is white on white crime and Hispanic on Hispanic crime or Latino or, there's, Somali on Somali crime. And, I get it. Okay, that's fair to say. Maybe there is a disproportionate coverage, but there's a disproportionate amount of crime, black on black crime in this country. To say even mentioning black on black crime is race, stop. Don't do that. Don't do that, because I've been at the funerals. I've been at the wakes. I've been to the morgue. I've seen the gunpowder on people's. I know what actually goes on. I'm not talking about what happens in my community, the black community, from an academic or esoteric point of view. I lived it. I survived it. I'm still surviving it. It's still dangerous. The biggest danger a black man faces in this country is other hating ass black men. Or even more so, sneaky, messy, self-loathing black women who need to feel some sense of attention and value by having a bunch of or a few black men fighting over her. I've seen it. I lived it. I survived it. Don't tell me that's racist. And if you want to, please, you know how to get a hold of me. I would love to debate in any public forum, anytime, any place about that issue. But I'll tell you this. If I can talk about black people, if I can talk about white people, if I can talk about liberal white women, if I could talk about the CCP and the Chinese, if I could talk about the Hispanic community, if I can say all these other names and name all these other names and talk about them and their culture and heritage and geopolitical or domestic political status, I better sure as hell be able to talk about the Jewish community. And if I can't, we're all full of shit. And it becomes very clear. Then you get to the apex. Then you start to really understand the political influence here. And you go, okay, well, how does a Tom Emmer and a Hakeem Jeffries end up on the payroll of the same political lobby? And we're all supposed to ignore that like the way they represent themselves in the public isn't completely contradictory of one another on a fundamental level politically. And I said this 6 months ago. This shit's all coming to fruition. It's all coming to a head. I said this 6 months. They're going to call me anti-Semitic for even saying this, but it's completely logical. I said the Republican Party either has to encourage AIPAC to divest from the radical Democrat agenda, or the Republican Party has to divest from AIPAC. One or the other, because both things can't stand. You can't tell me that the Republican Party platform, the things that we talk about to our constituents, to our people, to the citizens, continues to hold weight, continues to hold water, continues to be genuine when we share a political lobby who's giving money to our expressed, devout political enemies. And a lot of you who watch Fox News do talk about the Democrats in that way, and rightfully so, because their agenda is anti-American. It is anti-freedom. It is anti-Christian. 1,000%. You are right to characterize the radical Democrat agenda as being your enemy. You have all the merit in the world to have that passion about the current radical Democrat agenda. Absolutely. I encourage it 1,000%. You have that right, rightfully so. But then you can't justify being connected to a political lobby that gives money to that agenda. How do you square that circle? All you evangelical Christians who watch Fox News and say Mark Levin is a great constitutional conservative, or Sean Hannity supported Ronald Reagan during the Cold War, or whatever other bullshit you people convince yourselves of, how do you square the circle? That through Fox News and BlackRock and AIPAC, they all help fund the same radical Democrat agenda you say is destroying the country and your freedoms and citizenship. How do you square that circle? And then you say that the transgenders have cognitive dissonance. Yeah, they do, of a different sort. But that's pretty dissonant. That there's some dissonance in there too. It's not hard. It's easy to call these balls and strikes. AIPAC should divest from the radical Democrat agenda, and if not, then the Republican Party should distance itself from AIPAC. Simple, but you can't even say it. You can't even pose it. You can't even pose the question. Why is AIPAC giving money to Hakeem Jeffries? In what way is this acceptable to the Republican Party? If it's the same people who say, well, President Trump can't take a jet from Qatar, but we can take money from a lobby who's giving money to Hakeem Jeffries, who's then funneling money down to Ilhan Omar. What are we up to here? I mean, I'm just throwing questions out here today. I mean, this is going to be a conversation that continues. I'm just getting us started. What are we saying here? You can't criticize. There's one country in the world. There's one group of people in the world who you can't criticize, and we're supposed to tolerate that? The American people. I asked AI the other day. I was on AI because now I'm just kind of interacting with AI. I want to see what's going on. I want to get a feel for what's going on. I'm one of the most staunch, critics of AI and the dangers, and we need to be really considering where we're going with technology and AI. If you watch the show, you know that. But I asked AI the other day, Chat GPT, if you were to take over, if AI was to take over the world, which country's values would pose the greatest threat to that takeover? And their response was exactly what you would expect if you're a MAGA America First patriot. Their response was it wouldn't necessarily be an individual country per se, as much as a country's values, deeply rooted values. And the number one country was America. America was the number one country on the list. I invite you to go ask the same question to ChatGPT. If ChatGPT or AI was going to take over the world, which country's values would pose the greatest threat to that takeover? And it's America. And they cited three characteristics, three values that made America the greatest threat to an artificial intelligence takeover. The three listed things were free speech, the Second Amendment, and a skepticism of authority. Free speech, the Second Amendment, and skepticism of authority. Free speech, the Second Amendment, skepticism of authority. Those are the three things that make America's core values ones that would pose the greatest threat to an artificial intelligence takeover of the world. And we can't talk about Israel. We can't say the word Jewish. We can't even say there's a Jewish lobby. I say there's a Jewish lobby, and people said that's anti-Semitic. There's a Jewish lobby. It's called AIPAC, for starters. But there's a Jewish lobby, and there should be nothing wrong with saying that. Am I saying that the Jewish lobby always gets it wrong, that the Jewish lobby shouldn't exist, that they don't have a right to try and lobby on behalf of their interests? I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying it's ridiculous that I can't even make the rational and obvious observation that there is, in fact, a lobby. It's like when I said that a few Jewish elite ran the Fed. They did. Janet Yellen's Jewish. She's an elite. She ran the Fed. Ben Bernanke, he was Jewish. He's an elite. He ran the Fed. What's wrong with saying that they're Jewish elites? There are black elites. There are Chinese elites. There are Middle Eastern elites, Arab elites. There are, African elites. Every society, culture, ethnicity has an elite status of people. But if I say they're Jewish elites, I'm anti-Semitic. Okay. I mean, if that's how you guys want to play it. But I'll tell you this, all you evangelical Christians out there who are shilling for that type of conversation, you can't talk to me about being a patriot. You can't ask me, you can't say to me at a political event, it's crazy what these Democrats are trying to do to free speech. This is the predicate. The predicate for what the Democrats tried to do to free speech is deeply rooted in your own willingness to accept what you can and can't say about this issue right here, about Israel. When you accept there are things that people should or shouldn't be able to say in public about this issue, you have already conceded the ground that will eventually foment the regulation of free speech, censorship. And what's crazy about it is nobody's saying anything salacious. What's being said, you could take Kanye West and go, Kanye West is being salacious, and he's obviously doing it on purpose. Some of it he means to be joking. Some of it he's just doing for effect. You could say that there's that element of it. But what people are saying now is nowhere near salacious or hateful at all. And it really pulls the mask off of the agenda. And I think that what scares me even more is I genuinely think people are so lost in the propaganda. They convince themselves that the rest of us aren't watching and seeing exactly what they're doing. Like, for example, okay, now we arrive at the war itself. Like, for example, is the dichotomy, is the paradigm really, do we want Iran to have a nuclear weapon or not? Is that really even the paradigm? That's just like some Fox News Islamic fear porn propaganda. Really? Is that really the question? Do we want Iran to have a nuclear weapon or not? No. The question is, with the proliferation of nuclear weapons and nuclear science and atomic weapons, how long until dangerous people get nuclear weapons in any capacity? Anybody. It's a foregone conclusion that there's an inevitable trajectory that people who we don't want to have nuclear weapons will in fact have them at some point if technology continues to grow and advance in the direction that it is, namely artificial intelligence. Because as soon as artificial intelligence becomes truly open source, the ability for people to 3D print certain technologies that will give them access to certain dangerous certain dangerous weaponry is all but inevitable. It's already begun to happen. So we want the AI. We want the technological advancement. We want to be able to have nuclear weapons. We want nuclear weapons. We're okay with Israel having nuclear weapons. But we think that we can what? Control the rise of technology, the advancement of technology, so that the Chinese can't compete? Well, we've already lost that war. That the Russians can't compete? We've already lost that war. And now you got Russia and China sitting right there with Iran, and Iran is the new scapegoat. And what? North Korea? And here's the next one. Well, they yell death to America, so we have to go fight them. You pick a fight with everybody who insults you? Are we as a country going to pick a fight with everybody who insults us? Everybody and look, I was on the record. You can go back and listen to my podcast over the last 2 years, and I've said a number of times that Iran and the rest of these Middle Eastern countries, like Turkey, for example, Erdogan, who stood up after October 7th when the entire Muslim world was, fake coming together in brotherhood and saying, well, East versus West, cross versus crescent. I said then, how the fuck does Erdogan have the balls to stand up there in front of the Turkish people and talk about East versus West and cross versus crescent with our nukes holding on to our nukes, holding on to NATO's nukes? Who the fuck does this guy think he is? And I'll say the same thing about a bunch of other Arab leaders. There's a lot of bullshit propaganda that these Arab and Muslim leaders have to play to balance out or try and protect the power of their, monarchy or dictatorship juxtaposed to the people who are always on the brink of revolting, right? And it has a lot to do with their own desire to have technological and societal modernity versus the sort of traditional conservative Islamic views of their religious culture. It happens all over the Middle East, and that's why these people's statements, these Middle Eastern and Arab leaders' statements, never really matches the dogma of their religion. But now we get to Iran, and all of a sudden we're supposed to believe that they're as religiously dogmatic as they claim. I don't buy that. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. If they're so they scream death to America, so we got to go kill them. We need to get in a war. Lindsey Graham actually said we should get in a full-scale kinetic war. We should put boots on the ground. That should tell you everything you need to know. That should tell President Trump everything he needs to know. Whatever Lindsey Graham's in favor of in foreign affairs, we need to be on the others, far on the other side of. Far, far on the other side of. And if that's the case, why not go to war with North Korea? North Korea has nukes. They scream death to America. North Korea screams death to America, and they have nukes. Why aren't we just going to war with them? Now, some people would say, yeah, they're next. They're on the list, as well as Pakistan. And you remember, Pakistan has an even bigger country than Iran, an even bigger and stronger military than Iran does. Pakistan actually has nuclear weapons. They don't yell death to America, but, they're not so friendly either. So why aren't we going to go to war with Pakistan? A lot of people are saying Pakistan is next. And so it's not even just about Iran. And I think that's where many in this MAGA base are losing the plot here. This isn't about whether or not we like Iran or sympathetic to Iran or we want to defend Iran or want to see Iran with nuclear weapons or any of that shit. This is about a mentality. This is about an approach to our foreign policy. This is about getting pulled into a trajectory where anybody who yells death to America that has the chance to develop weapons of mass destruction is on a hit list that we now have to go and fight and pay for. That's what this is about. It's very fucking simple. And you could not like me. The conservative movement could kick me out. I could lose an audience. I don't give a fuck. I just don't give a fuck. I just tell you like it is. This is how it is. We cannot get ourselves into any sort of normalcy where any country who yells death to America, who doesn't like us, who doesn't like Israel, who has the chance to develop dangerous and advanced weaponry or technology, we have to go fight. Because we'll be fighting everybody. Because tomorrow, and I do mean tomorrow, everybody's going to have access to advanced technology and weaponry. This is how we want it. We want open source AI. We want people to be able to, how do I build the bomb, and be able to figure and 3D print, and I could put it all in my house. We want that. We want to deregulate. We want to decentralize, and there's a lot of good in that. I'm not advocating against it. If there's one thing I like about artificial intelligence, it's the decentralizing effect of it. But it is going to make everything more dangerous, and that's where America should thrive. As things become decentralized and there's more freedom, American citizens thrive. We want it that way. We believe in self-governance. We believe in the philosophical merit of republicanism, being a Republican, that I'm the master of my own universe. That is where we actually should be thriving. But it also comes with the need for discernment and wisdom and patience. And I'm not saying trust, but a little bit of reason. We got to be reasonable. Now, granted, if the consensus here in the West is, and I do believe it's more this than anything else, that the Iranians, any of these radically religious, nations or regimes are obsolete now, because we're going to a world where everybody wants to share in the business of advanced technology and artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution, and how can radical Islam be compatible with the Elon Musk vision of the future on Mars and low orbit habitats or whatever else, interstellar travel, whatever else. It's not compatible. And we're going to kill the Iranian regime because, hey, we can. They're just sand in the gears. They're just a hassle. They're a headache. We don't want to have to deal with them anymore. Fine. And like Tucker said, if that's what it is, if it's a regime change, why not just say that? Why not just come out and say, hey, we're getting rid of these guys because they don't want to play ball and we can. You don't say it because a lot of the American people wouldn't agree with it. And they wouldn't agree with it for good reason. And now let's get down to brass tacks. So we kill all these Iranian leaders and we institute a regime change. All we're creating there in Iran is the same situation that we had in Afghanistan and Iraq. Somebody tell me, whether it be Mark Levin or Lindsey Graham or Sean Hannity or whoever else, somebody tell me what the plan is to keep Iran the way we want it without occupying it. Nobody can ever tell you that. None of these evangelical Christian Zionists can tell you how we plan to keep Iran the way that we see fit without occupation. We can't. Syria's a failed state. Libya's a failed state. Iraq is a failed state. Afghanistan is a failed state. 4 countries that we were involved in the last 10 years, they're all failed states. None of them are the way we want it today. All of them are just, watering holes for terrorism, which is why we don't like to see these nationals from these countries come across our open border. Part of the reason why we wanted to close that open border is because there were nationals coming from these countries that we know are failed states of terrorism. And now we're going to create another one. You think by putting a leader there, the Shah or whoever else, because we put a leader there, all of a sudden the Iranian people are going to embrace us with open arms? Isn't that exactly what they told us about Iraq? This is exactly what they told us about Iraq. This is exactly what they told us about Afghanistan. They said that in Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan, they look at the Americans as heroes. They embrace us. They want us there. They want us there, boy. It's the infamous, line from Shooter, where he's pressing the senator in that story about having, sent a hit team in basically to clean out an African village and kill everybody for a pipeline they want to run through. And the senator says, we give them people running water and modern medicine. They like us there, boy. And it's just such an accurate motif because we actually say the same things in real life. The Afghani people wanted us there. Well, some of them probably did. Some of them surely did. But as soon as we lifted our physical occupation, they either chose the Taliban out of ideological agreement or they were forced to out of fear. They either chose the Taliban out of ideological agreement and opportunity, or they were forced to join the Taliban or accept the Taliban out of fear. And now, I don't know if now today, well, hopefully Donald Trump stopped those payments, but when Joe Biden left office, we were still paying the Taliban $15 million a week to not torture their own people. Al-Qaeda, we let Al-Qaeda take Syria back. We let Al-Qaeda topple the Assad regime. Al-Qaeda's running Syria now. How is that appropriate? How is the same terrorist organization that perpetrated the crimes of 9/11 being allowed and supported and encouraged to run a country in a regime change? What is your excuse? What's your argument? Oh, the Iranians are Muslims. That's it. We should kill them. I mean, if that's your argument, cool, fine. But don't act like you got any political gravitas. Don't act like you got any real salt. Don't act like you're really worth your salt in any intellectual capacity. You're not. And I don't give it go all the way from Ben Shapiro down to your average social media ex user. It doesn't matter. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your title is. I don't care what your status is. I don't care about your education or your experience or none of that shit. Let's just talk first principles and logic. How do we keep Iran the way we want it without occupying it? How? We assume that the Iranian people are being oppressed and they don't agree with the Iranian leadership. And here's the thing. Even if that's true, even if 70%, 80% of the people in Iran don't agree with the radical caliphate of the Ayatollah, that 20% of people on 100 million is 20 million people. And if they are radicalized and they are extreme and they are willing to do terrorism, you are about to cause another chaotic, failed state in the same region we just left. And that's the bottom fucking line. If not, tell me how. We're going to bomb them every couple of years, every time a revolution rises up and they bring a new Ayatollah. Remember, the Ayatollah's rise was a revolution to begin with. He wasn't elected. We were already in Iran. We were already in the Middle East, and the Ayatollah ran a revolution, and the Shah was ousted in the first place. This is how the Ayatollah got there to begin with. There was already a Muslim caliphate revolution there in the Middle East, multiple. So again, somebody tell me, how do we make Iran do what we want them to do without physically occupying it? And if your answer is, well, we'll have to physically occupy it, like Lindsey Graham said, and we're going to have to physically occupy every country that doesn't like us, wants to harm us, and has the technological capability to do it. Well, I think we're going to find ourselves in a war with China here shortly. I think we're going to find ourselves in a even more escalated war with Russia shortly. Maybe not. Maybe the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians, certainly the Iranians that they killed they assassinated, surely they weren't in on it, or they met a demise that they didn't account for. But maybe they're all fucking in on it. Maybe the deep state in this military industrial complex is really so sophisticated that there's a game going on here that we don't even really see. We see it as this nation versus that nation and this interest and that interest, but maybe there's a bigger game going on here that we're not even aware of. I hope not. I actually hope that it's just more of a Darwin sort of survival of the fittest battle of nations and a joust for power. But I have my skepticism because honestly, not only does this shit not make sense, the story doesn't even the story's not even good. I mean, at least kiss me when you lie to me, If you're going to lie to me, kiss me while you lie to me. They're not even kissing us while they're lying to us. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump because I think that, I'm hearing that the intelligence that he got is, that they tried to assassinate him or that they were close to having a bomb. And he made a decision based on and look, history will judge. Is it possible that they have a bomb? Yeah. Is it possible they're close to having a bomb? Yeah, that's possible. But we said no more forever wars. It's no more dangerous that Iran has a nuclear weapon than North Korea. And for that matter, if you want to go that far, then the Chinese, the CCP, they want us dead even more than the Iranians do. Or just as bad, they want power too. The Russians, they want power. They got no love for us. When Vladimir Putin's up there on the world stage calling us the Anglo-Saxon Empire, they're already exchanging hypersonic missiles. And oh yeah, the same people who want us to go to war now in Iran told us that these are the same people that the Victoria Nulands and the Keegans and all of these neocon scumbags, these are the same people who told us the war with Russia would be over in weeks, that Vladimir Putin couldn't withstand the sanctions. They lied straight to your face. They know good and well that Russia has the natural resources necessary to sustain a war. Money, the economy, the money is based on an international agreement of commerce. As soon as one country says they're not playing by the rules, it goes down to what natural resources they have and the will and the human energy and commitment and morale to let's say to convert those natural resources into tools, into weapons, into fuel. Russia has all those things. They don't need the rest of the world to play ball. In fact, people still taking Russian oil. China's still taking Russian oil. Come on now. China's still taking Russian oil, and we're still taking Chinese antibiotics. So how many sanctions did we really put on Russia? Stop it. That's why I tell people the military-industrial complex is about the conflict continuing. It's about inventory. It's about money. It's about budget so they can continue to justify stealing our money. And I guarantee you when the next bill comes down the hatch, I guarantee you there's going to be a resolution put forth in Congress or the Senate to say we have to increase the debt ceiling, we have to increase the budget to prepare to fight this new war, this new conflict there in Iran. Take it to the bank. It's coming. And none of that is said, as a condemnation of Israel or the Jews. It's not anti-Semitic. This is about American policy. This is about America's future. It says this has nothing to do with anybody hating Jews. This has to do with the way things actually are. The way things are, the way things have been, the way we want them to be. Our country's $37 trillion in debt, and Donald Trump's working on that. He's done a great job. It's most disappointing because I feel like whoever's around him, influencing him is taking his eye off the ball. I'm not saying his eye is off the ball. I'm saying that they're trying to get his eye off the ball because he had all these people to the table, all these Arab countries who also say death to the West, who also don't like America. He had all these countries at the table willing to do a deal, and they were willing to do a deal, and they said, you know what? We're Muslim. We believe in Islam, but we want to do business more than we care about being radical Muslims. And they were ready to do the deals. Even Iran. And I don't know what changed over 24, 48 hours. I don't know. But I went to bed one night and Donald Trump said on a public press conference, I hate to say it, but yes, I told Bibi he should wait. We got a deal going. This is going to kill the deal. And then all of a sudden, we're supporting them. I don't know what happened, but I know a lot of the American people are rightfully looking at it and going, "What the fuck just happened?" They fired Waltz. They fired the national security advisor, and they could say it was for a mistake or whatever it was, but we know where he was at on this on this issue. And I don't want to get too conspiratorial about it because I'm not there. I don't know what's going on. I'm watching it from afar as well. I would love to be in the room. I would love to stand up and say, you know what, guys, I got to be honest. Reasonable and rational as you all know me to be, this doesn't make any sense. We got to have more answers here. Don't just tell me they're close to having a nuclear weapon. I mean, you can tell that to geriatric, boomers that watch Fox News, or sycophant Christian Zionists, you can tell them that and not get any more questioning. But that's a condemnation of them, and it is. It is. If you take the one-liners and you repeat it, you got to ask yourself how you feel about your own citizenship. And maybe that has something to do with why our Christian nation gave our country over to Satanists. Why our Christian nation gave our country over to Marxists and communists. We have to ask those broad questions from these little instances where we have examples about our own cowardice or our own laziness. It's intellectually lazy to say, oh, well, they have a bomb, so we got to go fight a war with them. It's intellectually lazy to say they were on the brink of having a bomb, so we need to go fight a war with them. It's all intellectually lazy. Tell me the plan to victory. Tell me the path to victory. They're going to surrender? Maybe. Maybe they do. That'd be great. And I've said it all week long. If we bunker bust all the nuclear facilities and we get rid of all the Iranian leaders who were, bloodthirsty, and that's the end of this conflict in the next couple of weeks, great, fine. But what are you all willing to say if it's not? And I'm talking about you who support these efforts. At the moment where this extends beyond the next couple of weeks and there's no resolution, there's no conclusion to this conflict, or the Iranians cut a deal and they get to continue existing the very same way they did before we bombed them, what are you all going to say? And you got to be able to look in the mirror honestly and ask yourself at that point, what is it in me that is so desperate for this particular narrative? They say that the marker of intelligence, true intelligence is cognitive sort of elasticity, the ability to be able to adapt. That doesn't mean that you don't have morals and principles that you stand on, or you have to live with a sort of moral relativism, but it does mean that as you get new information, as you see new things start to happen, you have to be willing to change your point of view and deal with reality. There's a reality here. The reality is, yes, the country of Israel obviously has a sort of unacceptable influence on our leaders. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump. This is well before Donald Trump. Donald Trump's one of the few people in recent American history that's even been willing to challenge Bibi Netanyahu. The rest of them, Democrat and Republican alike, have almost kowtowed to him in a way that's reprehensible. Donald Trump's actually been willing to give him some pushback. But man, I don't understand what we're doing here. What's going to come out of this? I mean, they're already talking about cutting a deal. Okay, so you killed a few Iranian leaders, few Iranian generals. The Ayatollah is still alive, the intellectual thought leader or spiritual leader of that regime. He's still alive. If you kill him, you get a vacuum where there's another guy like the Ayatollah who's going to take power. If you leave the Ayatollah in there, he's going to train the next generals that are willing to step into the shoes. I mean, you can't. This is the problem with being the world's police. Now, if you're going to say attacking Israel is the same as attacking America, I mean, okay. So let's just annex the Middle East then. Let's just stop fucking around. I mean, why do we have to continue to play games and slap the Israel flag on it? If we're going to do it in our name, do it in our name. Fuck what the international community thinks. Fuck what the UN thinks. Fuck what the G7 thinks. Who gives a fuck? I don't really give a fuck about any of those international organizations anyway. I don't give a shit what the UN Security Council thinks or the United Nations thinks. I don't give a shit what NATO thinks. Me personally, as an American citizen, and you may say, oh, well, you're unfit to be a U.S. senator then. Fine. But I don't give a shit what any of these globalist international groups think anyway. The Trilateral Commission or the World Economic Forum, fuck them in their opinion. If we're saying that Israel is an extension of America, then just put an American flag on it. Let's deal in earnest then. Let's deal with all these Arab nations in earnest. Why do we have to have this proxy, this go-between, this middleman? We don't need it. Put America, just slap America on all the nations. Give them a referendum. Are you with America? Or are you with, somebody? Are you with China or Russia? We're in a jump ball. We all know what's going on. We all know there's a proxy war. We know there's a proxy war because the military officials and experts and international diplomats and everybody else who talks about these issues from an expert point of view openly talks about it being a proxy conflict. No matter which way you look at it, there's a proxy conflict going on. Fine. So we accept that. There's a big proxy war going on for control of the world, this multipolar future. Fine. Cool. It's all very academic. Then let's just get to it. Fuck it. Slap the American flag on Israel and say, motherfucker, this is America. If you attack Israel, you're attacking America. Okay. Let's be transparent about it, though. But don't make it seem like Iran, wanting to develop their own nuclear program or whatever the fuck else they're doing is a direct and immediate threat to me here in the state of Minnesota or there in New York City or there in California or there in Miami or Florida. Don't say that because it loses the credibility. It undermines the credibility, and we don't need to. Just say, if you attack Israel, you're attacking America. But we don't want to say that, right? We didn't want to give Israel their own Moabs. We didn't want to give Israel their own bunker busters. That's why, as much as we say Israel can handle it themselves, it would appear that they can't. Yeah, because we're still flying our aircraft carriers into the region. Oh, well, that's just support. This is Ted Cruz. Oh, well, we're doing operations right now, military strikes. Tucker goes, we? What do you mean, we? America's not involved. We're not doing anything offensive. Oh, well, we're supporting them. Huh? Okay. No, we are then. And they do need our help. So why do people keep saying that they don't need our help? That they can handle it on their own? I mean, what kind of strange machismo is it of sort of Israel fan machismo where they can handle it themselves? No, they can't. No, they can't. And partly because we don't want to give them what they asked for to be able to handle it. To be honest, we don't want to give them the bunker busters. Why? Why don't we want them to have? What about our distrust of Israel has us where we don't want to give them the bunker buster bombs? Are we holding that over their head? I don't know what's going on here. I'm just asking questions. Somebody enlighten me. Why do they need our bunker busters? Well, because we said we wouldn't give it to them. And this has been longstanding policy, American foreign policy in relation to Israel. We'll support them. We'll give them money. We'll give them certain things, but we don't give them the bunker busters. Well, we already know that Iran their nuclear facilities are probably deep down underground. They can read that we don't give Israel the bunker busters just like anybody else. It's open source knowledge. I mean, the Iranian leader, the Ayatollah, obviously knows how to use X. The Iranian, leadership there obviously knows how to use social media. So you can't tell me they can't find the Federal Register notes where we wouldn't give Israel the Moabs, the bunker busters. They know, so they dug the nuclear site lower. But there is this strange little thing where if you chat GPT or AI, you ask, say, if you're a billionaire, how long would it take you to build a nuclear weapon? 5 years. Still a very, very slow process. Very, very slow process. Shocked me. Shocked me how slow the process is. But if we can't, if we are going to bunker buster the nuclear facilities, and this whole thing is going to be over, praise be to God. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, honestly. And I hope people out there understand that this is probably the most reasonable and even-handed that you'll get from some hardcore ultra MAGA people about the issue. If that's the case, if this is all going to be over in the next couple of weeks, in the next 14 days, fine, good. We got some new Iranian generals. We got the Ayatollah. He's still there, but we, slapped him on the wrist and basically, showed him who was in charge. The Iranians' nuclear program is shattered and broken. Great. This will all be a footnote in what has been a fantastic Trump second term so far. This will all be a footnote. But if this war continues beyond the next 2 weeks, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. This can't turn into the Russia-Ukraine conflict where they say it's going to be over soon. It's going to be over right away. It's almost over. It's almost over. The Ukrainians are winning. The Russians are just about to surrender and give up. The Russians are just about to come back to the table and have peace talks. If anything, if I'm Iran and I'm looking at Russia, my big brother Russia, now I guess Russia just said they're pulling their support from Iran, which tells you how how flimsy the Iron Triangle was to begin with, which I said as well, that knew that they would hang the Iranians out to dry when the opportunity presented itself, because Russia cares about Russia first. They're not so interested in their international alliances when push comes to shove. If it comes down to the Russians and the Iranians are going to side with the Russians. We're going to look out for Russia. The Iranians got to go at it alone. But they've already provided the example for the Iranians to go at it alone. If I'm Iran and I'm looking at Russia, I'm saying the West told us that they could break the will of the Russians, that they could force the Russians into submission. They couldn't. So why would we give up? Why would we surrender? And how do we have all this intel? If Putin is as dangerous to the West as they claim, why do we have all this intelligence about where all these Iranian generals and leaders are, and we don't about the Russian generals? That's a genuine question. Somebody answer that one for me. How do we have all of this intelligence about exactly where these Iranian generals, officials, leaders, even the Ayatollah himself, how do we have all of this intel about where these people are? But Russia's the greatest threat to Western civilization, and we don't know where anybody is. And if we did, why didn't we just take the Russian leadership out? Again, if we're going to regime change and the Russians are the greatest threat, then why don't we just regime change Russia? Well, because the support of Russian leadership and Russian politics is far greater than Western propaganda will let you in on. It's the same thing with the Saudis. Oh, the Saudis are with the Americans. Oh, the Saudis, the Saudis support Israel. They want a relationship with Israel. But then as soon as Israel attacks Iran, the Saudis go, we condemn these attacks from Israel. A bunch of other Arab countries do the same thing. Why? Are they doing it just for their own people so they can save face as leaders? I don't know. I'm not them. I'm just saying what I'm looking at. Saudi Arabia, day one, they condemn the attacks of Israel. Do you? Or are you just saying that? We got to start to figure out, who actually means what they say, and we sure as hell better mean what we say, as America, especially if we have any chance of keeping our civilization intact with a sort of underpinning of human rights, freedom of speech, those core American values that will protect us from artificial intelligence taking over. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGate.com. That's TireGate.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. I hope that you would buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. We appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. Make sure that you go subscribe, like, comment, share. Visit freepeopleradio.com. We got a lot of great merchandise. We're going to be updating the store, in the next couple of weeks for the summer. And my thoughts and prayers. I didn't even get a chance to talk about the Vance Boltier situation. And many consultants and experts of my political campaign running again for Senate here in 2026 would say it's probably better that you talk about the tragic murders of the Minnesota lawmakers than to get involved in these foreign policy conversations, because they're so polarized, and there's really no good way to talk about them. But that's not being a leader. Especially as United States Senator, our foreign policy is right up at the top of what our U.S. senators should be involved with and thinking about. But my heart, is broken, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the family of the Minnesota lawmaker and the spouse, and their spouse that we lost this past week. Just a heinous thing to do. It's obviously sketchy, and anytime somebody decides they're going to go kill somebody at their house politically motivated in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. in the morning, it's going to be a mystery. It's going to be sketchy. There's going to be a lot of questions that in many ways we never get solved. I was telling somebody the other day, I still remember the Las Vegas shooter. from the hotel, and what was the motivation? What was going on there? Are people sometimes just crazy? Yes. But are there sometimes false flags and other things that are at play? Absolutely. And so investigations should be thorough around these types of incidents. I'm glad that they caught him. I don't know who he voted for. I don't know if he was Republican or Democrat. Was he appointed by Tim Walz? Yes. Does that mean that he was a Democrat? No. If he voted Republican, does that mean that he was MAGA? Does that mean that he was a conservative? If he voted Republican, does that even mean that he's really Republican? No. So, I mean, to try and politicize it, I was against that from the beginning. Hold on. Let's see what's going on here. Let's find out. A lot of questions still be answered there. Obviously, the investigation is underway. We're happy that he was caught, and hopefully, we'll see what he has to say. Hopefully, they find out more information about what motivated these killings and what's going on. Minnesota, the belly of the beast again, making national headlines for all the wrong reasons, and we will continue to see Minnesota sort of be a cultural epicenter of American politics and the decline of this country, which is why I'm running for United States Senate. But World War III takes precedent. There's a corollary, and I'll say this to end. There's a correlation between being so disconnected from reality, so manic, so sort of psychopathic in your political worldview that you decide your life is no longer worth living, or you've, gone off the deep end and you're going to go kill a couple of lawmakers who are about as influential on the overall circumstance in our country and our communities for that matter, as you probably feel yourself. When you get to that point where you're so manic and you're so, psychopathic, you might not even be making those obviously you're not making those kind of rational calculations. But um, I mean, in some sense, people start to feel powerless in their own life, and they're overwhelmed for whatever reasons, marriage, money, the usual suspects, and they decide that life is really no longer worth living. That's why allegedly he text messaged his roommate and said, I might be dead soon. You get to that place of despair. First of all, you could say you're Christian, and this is a cautionary tale for all of my Christian viewers out there, the Jason Whitlocks of the world who hang their hat on their Christian identity. You could say you're Christian. You could say you're Christian, but it's one thing to say you're Christian. It's another thing to accept and submit to the will of God and Jesus Christ. We are in the covenant of Christ. I'll reiterate that, and we'll talk about the theological, perspective of this, situation that we have going on with Israel and all of these Christians who just blindly support Israel, the state of Israel, not even Israel, geographically. It's not even a geographical thing in some sense. It's a political thing. Again, not involved in politics. Jason Whitlock just voted for the first time in 2024, but all of a sudden, the Christian evangelical community, he won't condemn them. He won't decry the 501c3 Christians I talked about on his show so many times, and a lot of his Christian audience you could find in the chats going, oh, here he goes about the 501c3 Christians. Well, here we are on the brink of a war where there's evangelical Christian support, blind evangelical Christian support that makes no biblical sense whatsoever for the state of Israel. And it's political. It's not even religious. You have a man who claimed to be a Christian who, number one, decides that his life is no longer worth living, and two, he's going to take somebody else's life, and and he's basically made a decision to die, death by cop, that kind of a situation. What's Christian about that? Nothing. There's nothing Christian about that. It's anti-Christian. What Vance Bolter decided to do this past is anti-Christian. He can call himself, and the Democrats still, oh, here goes another Christian extremist. The same way they call the radical Muslims. Here they go, terrorist attackers, another radical Muslims. It's like, okay, Yeah, he acted real extreme, and he claims to be a Christian. But when you believe in God in a more technical way, your actions have a bearing on your status. This is a problem with the Protestant worldview, is that they believe their actions don't have any true bearing on their eternal spiritual status. So, in effect, you could see where a Vance Boltier would get to the place where he actually convinces himself he is doing the Lord's work, even if it means going against what the Lord says to do in the Bible, because it doesn't matter what he does or doesn't do. All he has to do is believe in Christ and ask for forgiveness, and he'll be forgiven and enter the kingdom of heaven. See, us Catholics, we think a little different. And there's a lot of problems with the Catholic Church, no doubt about that. But us Catholics, we view it a little different. We go, well, you could call yourself a Christian, but as soon as you have now fallen into sin and you've fallen into a positions of needing repentance, and not only repentance, you have to pay back restitution. Right. So if you go out in a blaze of glory and you've killed somebody unjustly and you die, you've not been able to pay that restitution. You don't get to go to heaven. You have to pay that debt. You have to pay it back. You have to go into the kitchen, as they say, and clean dishes for 7 years. You have to pay restitution back in addition to repentance. It's not Christian, it's anti-Christian. It's almost demonic. To impersonate a cop, show up at somebody's house, their family's home, show up at a lawmaker's family's home and kill them in cold blood is demonic. It's not Christian. But I'll also say that people who claim to be Jewish that don't believe in God, you're not Jewish. You don't hold the tradition. You don't believe in God, you're not Jewish. And if you say you're Jewish on an ethnic or genetic basis, okay, fine. Fine. But anybody who has a criticism of you is not anti-Semitic. We got to stop doing that shit. We got to stop saying people are racist, when they're not racist. We got to stop saying people are extreme when they're not extreme. We got to stop saying people are conspiracy theorists when they ask basic questions. We got to stop being so politically, polarized and sort of manic that somehow a Tucker Carlson can't even question Mark Levin, or else he hates the state of Israel and the Jews. If we don't stop being like that, we're going to lose this country. We're going to lose this country. And I heard all these Republicans talking, what's funny to end here, all these Republicans talk to me about election strategy and what things were feasible and made you electable or viable as a candidate. What's viable or electable about losing a coalition that doesn't believe in forever wars? Losing the MAGA coalition that has been built that says we have to deal with our own affairs first, that brought in the RFK Juniors and the Tulsi Gabbards and the Maha movement and many of the other libertarians and all these other coalitions of people who weren't necessarily Republicans or conservatives that voted for Donald Trump because of his message and because we believed in what he said and we believed that he would do it. And he has done it. He's done it in the past. And he's even started to do it now. But this is a turning point. Early in this administration, early in this second term, this is a turning point, and I pray that Donald Trump has the wisdom and the discernment to make the right decision and to guide us as the commander-in-chief and as the leader through these turbulent times. But I keep watching for the news to say that Iran's leaders have surrendered, or that there's a deal cut, or that the conflict is over. And every day, every week that this drags on, all we're doing is creating more turmoil and more distraction from what's important. And that's closing that fucking border. And that's making sure that our elections are secure. And that's deconstructing that Department of Education and making sure that our young people are taught in a way that's competitive with their international counterparts. Fighting back the constitutional crisis on the horizon with the judicial branch that seeks to undermine Donald Trump's agenda to right some of these wrongs and to correct the direction of the ship. Now, you can argue that Barack Obama and what the Democrats did by empowering Iran in the first place is all part of righting that ship. Okay. Okay. Well, I say no to put American boots on the ground. 2 days ago, we're not going to put American boots on the ground at all. That's not even a possibility. Now, in the last 24 to 48 hours, I believe Lindsey Graham says we should be full scale boots on the ground. I mean, y- you know, Ted Cruz, for example, Christian conservative Texan Ted Cruz. Somehow he's ultra MAGA. He supported the president because he had to support the president because he lives in MAGA, Texas, and he'd get crucified politically if he didn't support the MAGA movement and Donald Trump. But Ted Cruz is in an interview with Tucker Carlson, and Tucker asks him, "How many people live in Iran?" And he goes, "I don't know. I don't spend my time studying population charts, population graphs, or population tables." I mean, how dishonest is that on face value? That was one of the most dishonest things I think I've ever seen in my 34 years of being alive. At this moment in American history, with what is on the table, Ted Cruz did one of the most dishonest things I think I've seen in my entire life. He tried to pretend that every country's population holds the same weight as the country that we are planning on or currently supporting a regime change and topple of a government. It's so dishonest, it's ridiculous. Of course, you should know the population size of a country where we plan to topple the government to change a regime and will, in some capacity, have to support financially, militarily, materially. We will have to support an effort to hold off a revolutionary resurgence or insurgency there in that country. Of course, you should know how many people live there, Senator. Of course, you should know how many people live there. I mean, this is why I'm running for United States Senate. It's been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back on Friday with Hebrews, a timely Hebrews. My co-host, the great Professor Penn. Godspeed to you all. God bless America. God bless President Donald Trump. And we're praying for you in this moment because leadership isn't easy. And that's what I'll say in closing. Leadership ain't easy. Being the president of the United States ain't easy. All these different countries and all their different interests and all the different lobbies and the verticals and the donors and being president isn't easy. And we can all sit here from the armchair and criticize all we want, but there's nothing easy about it. And I would say the same thing for Joe Biden and anybody else. Being president can't be easy. There's a lot of there's a lot of power at play there. There's a lot of forces at work there. And if you're Christian, you understand powers and principalities. There's a lot of spiritual, warfare going on, especially at that level, especially when you're talking about world matters, world affairs. So give President Trump some grace. I'm saying it. Give President Trump some grace. Do I disagree with what we've done so far in Iran? I do. I think we should just stay out of these conflicts altogether. If Israel's strong enough to go at it alone, let them do their thing. Let them fight their war. If Iran, and another sort of psyop is, well, we have American bases there with our soldiers and we have citizens that live in Israel, so we're obligated. Well, on the first day of President Trump's presidency, then the decree should have been, we're bringing all of these people home from all around the world because if not, we are bound to inevitably be in another forever war by having to defend our bases, the national interests, or even our citizens and troops. If our troops are stationed all around the world, how long is it before some other country, kills one of our soldiers and now we're back in a war? So big decisions have to be made now, actual decisions where this can't be a fluffer kind of movement. This can't be about just talking about it and rhetoric. It's be about it, walk about it. And that's tough. That's tough because how do you do it logistically? And much of that Donald Trump's still probably trying to figure out, with the shit storm the shit sandwich that he was handed by this globalist establishment. He's probably trying to sort some of that out. And some of that probably can't be said in the public. So we do have to give him some grace and hope that he's sorting this out in a trajectory and a timeline that makes sense logistically. I understand that. But for us as citizens, it's also perfectly it's perfectly reasonable for us to express our disinterest, our dissatisfaction, our disagreement with getting involved with this war without the information that he has. If he has better information and he has a better plan that's more long-term, fine, that's possible. And we can support that, and we can all come back together on the other side of this and go, hey, this worked out for the better. We've done it many times as a nation. But it's perfectly reasonable right now for the MAGA, commentators who are going, wait a second, we said no more forever wars. It's perfectly reasonable for them to express that disagreement as well. And if you're so sycophantic about the movement or about Donald Trump or about Israel or about the Jewish identity or whatever it is that nobody can have a dissenting opinion about us getting in a forever war, I got to say you're not MAGA. You're not MAGA. It ain't about Donald Trump. It ain't about anybody. You may not be MAGA because we don't play that in the MAGA movement. We invite dissenting opinions. We want to hear them because there's a chance that somebody in the minority has an idea or something to say that we haven't thought of yet. So I appreciate you all again today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope I'm talking reasonably and rationally. If I'm not, say in the comments, Royce, you're a fucking crazy quack. Nothing you said makes any sense. I'm fine with that. That's cool too. But hopefully, I'm adding some calm and some reason to a situation that's very, very hot, just chaotic. We want to see the MAGA movement continue. We want to see the MAGA movement succeed. We want to see Donald Trump and his agenda succeed. We want to see Donald Trump make it through the midterms and on to 2028. And I would even love to see a Donald J. Trump 2028. I've been on the record saying it. Trump 2028. I just bought a hat at our state central committee meeting that we had for the Republican Party this past weekend. There was a 2028 hat, and I guess it was controversial. People didn't like it. I bought one. I said, I like the 2028 Trump 2028 hat. Anyway, but these things have to get sorted out, and that's just it. It can't be, we can't be all sensitive about it. We just got to sort it out. We got to talk this shit out. That's okay. We got difference of opinions. People have different opinions. That's good. That we invite that. We don't want to become leftists. We don't want to become dogmatic in our approach to politics. We want to have differences of opinion. That's what brings the widest tent, biggest coalition. But we also want to adhere to that coalition and sort of, keep the promises to that coalition. And I don't think getting involved in long wars that we can't win is unreasonable thing to ask. Not getting involved in those wars. That's not unreasonable, no matter who it is. No matter who it is. It's not an extreme or crazy thing to ask for. We got to take care of home first. We don't want to get involved in another one of these 20-year wars in the Middle East. So show us the plan. Tell us the plan. Tell us the path to victory. Or maybe you can't. Maybe it's classified because telling us the path to victory would alert our enemies. Okay. Then it's healthy and right for the American people to have skepticism and to question. You got to accept that too. If I got to keep a secret from my wife for whatever reason, which, many would say in a marriage you shouldn't keep secrets, but let's say it's for our own safety. If I have to keep a secret from my family, my wife, for her own safety, then I have to also accept that there's going to be some skepticism in how I'm acting and how I'm moving. Of course there is. Well, how crazy would it be for me to get mad at them for going, hey, you said you're going to be back at 8 o'clock. You weren't back till 8 o'clock in the morning. What went on? What happened? So, yeah, of course. Right? There should be skepticism when the plan changes, when the plan shifts. And we got to be able to adapt as well. But look, the way that people use anti-Semitism is completely inappropriate, unacceptable. It should be offensive to Jewish people all around the world. And even if it's in your own interest for Israel to be strong, the way that Judaism and Jews and that identity is discussed, the way that Israel is discussed politically has to remain honest. And if it's not, it undermines the safety and security and the sort of common support and sentiment towards the Jewish people when you do that. So that's just what it is. And I say that as sincerely as I can as a black man who feels the same way about the way racism is used. Again, God bless you all. Godspeed. Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees, or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.